I'm Andrew,
And I'm Sam.
and this is Teens Talk Politics. In today's video, we'll be going over the news that happened in the past week since last Friday when our last news video came out. And we'll be covering all sorts of topics that are politically related, starting from this Friday, or last Friday, sorry, up to this Thursday when we will be recording. And the first major news came out yesterday. Donald Rumsfeld dies, and he was the former Secretary of Defense under George W. Bush. He was also the Chief of Staff under President Ford. Any thoughts on that, Sam?
Yeah, I think he was as we know, Donald Rumsfeld oversaw the early section of the Iraq War, and as Secretary of Defense, and so I think his contribution definitely played a lot into the future of Iraq War, and so it's his position sorry his position during the Iraq War was very influential and not to be forgotten.
Well, I think he was very similar to Dick Cheney during the Bush administration between the year 2001 and then, of course, 2009, where people called him a warmonger. And I think it was very similar to how Donald Rumsfeld felt in terms of war and how he used defense, being the defense secretary. And I think if he hadn't been such a warmonger, would we have ever gone into Iraq? Would we have ever gone into Afghanistan? I don't know. Of course, that's like a what-if scenario, because we don't know if someone else was in charge, would this have happened? And I think he really, he got a lot of backlash, because a lot of lives were lost in this war, and he was really the one that said, okay, we're going to go into Iraq. And I think if he hadn't done that, there wouldn't have been any more lives lost. But of course, the issues in Iraq probably wouldn't have been solved in such a significant way.
Yeah. So again, a very controversial man here. He could either be the one who saved the United States from terrorist attacks or whatever, or he could have been the one that dragged it into a devastating war for that the U.S. would never get out of until a lot longer.
And you look at the two sides, and then if you're more liberal or a Democrat, you'll be, I hate this person because he was the one that got us into this war with Afghanistan. He was the one that got us in the war with Iraq, right? And Syria, and basically the Middle East, just in general. He sent troops out to the Middle East. And then more conservatives are like, we had to do that. Of course, not all conservatives are like that. Rand Paul didn't support it. That's one big conservative. Like when Obama started pulling troops out of the Middle East, he supported that. He was one of the few Republicans that did. But just in general, it's basically split on partisan lines, except for that exception with Rand Paul. Most of the time, it's going to be if a Republican president is going to start a war, Republicans are going to support that. If Democrats are the ones starting a war, Democrats are going to support that. And I think that's really shown here, especially with Donald Rumsfeld and what he did during the Bush administration starting a war in the Middle East. So that was a very short segment, but now we're going to be moving on to update with COVID-19 vaccines in the United States. And as we know, it's quite easy nowadays to receive a vaccine in the United States because we have a lot of supply, and there's a lot of anti-vaccination people that are refusing to get the vaccine. But we are slowly but surely reaching 50%. We're almost there to 50% of the public fully vaccinated in the United States, and I think this is a major milestone. Of course, by July 4th, the bar that President Biden has set will probably not be hit by a majority of states, which is sad, but that's purely because of anti-vaccination people that refuse to get the vaccine, even though there's science proving that it works and it's not dangerous. And I think that's a big liability for those people that if they're in a crowded place, they get the virus. They haven't had it yet, so they're not immune in any way, shape, or form. They don't have the antibodies, and then they die or get super sick where they don't recover to the point they were before they had the virus. And I really think that we're already doing a lot to get anti-vaccination people to be pro-vaccine, show them the science. But I think we need to do more in educating these people. Yes, the vaccine is good, and we need more people to get vaccinated. Otherwise, we're never going to hit herd immunity.
Yeah. And as we didn't point out, 55% of the population has received at least one dose, which is still promising that we're still getting people. And I think about a month, just over a month ago, the COVID shot was released for kids and teens 12 and above, which I think which is a great thing, and I think a lot of teens has gotten it, and this could even push us closer to that milestone. But I think a lot of parents are very skeptical about their children getting these new vaccines, and understandably so. But if you're a parent watching this in the unlikely scenario that you are during the COVID-19 pandemic, the odds of your child being more protected when they get fully vaccinated are much greater than the odds that, I don't know, they injected, like, whatever crazy conspiracies people are coming up with. This vaccine is safe. There is research behind it, and so go get your child vaccinated.
And like Sam said just a minute ago, yes, I understand why people are hesitant, because not all the science has been explored yet. Like, I was watching an interview with Jake Tapper a few days ago, and he was interviewing Anthony Fauci, Dr. Fauci, and he was saying not all the science has been proven. He was talking about somebody got the Johnson & Johnson and Moderna vaccine, which, like, I think most of us know, Johnson & Johnson's a 1-dose, while Moderna is a 2-dose vaccine to get fully vaccinated. And the science hasn't been fully explored. They didn't know that taking a Johnson & Johnson Moderna would help you, but he says there's no downsides, so they let him go ahead and do it, and it worked. It helped improve the effectiveness of that vaccine. And I think, yes, there are these small wings in the vaccine that haven't been explored yet, and we don't know about, but we know enough about the vaccine that we know it's going to be safe. As far as we know, there hasn't been any major deaths or anything from the vaccine, so we know it's safe to take. So I feel like people need to just suck it up and take it. Right?
Yeah, and side effects on this vaccine have been very minimal. Some even less than vaccines that we've had for years. Like, it's these scientists who's been working for 14-hour days trying to get this vaccine out us to keep safe, but to keep us safe. I think we better show our gratification and by getting it. Because it's super safe, no side effects, nothing's gonna happen. I mean, there are some side effects, but very minimal. So there's no issue, and if you want to go do research on yourself, do that.
And then the argument is, I want to do the best for my kids, especially with parents that want to get either don't want to get the vaccine for the kids or want to get the vaccine for their kids. And their argument is, we want to do the best that we can for our kids. And what the studies show is getting your kid vaccinated is going to be significantly better than letting them just get COVID without being covered with the vaccine.
Yeah.
So like Sam said, you need to make sure that your kids or yourself are vaccinated. And I think that basically rounds up this section, unless you have anything else to say.
Yeah, I mean, as Andrew was saying, you only have around, when you contract the COVID-19 vaccine, contract COVID-19, sorry. Once you contract COVID-19, you only, if you survive, you only have like a 70 to 80% immunity from the CDC. Yeah. While on the other hand, you can get a vaccine that is more protective against variants, and has 90 to 100% immunity.
Yeah, because so far we've seen that if you're a kid, it's about 100, because I don't think any kids have gotten sick after having the vaccine. Of course, statistically, that statistic probably won't stay the same. Some kid somewhere that's had both of their vaccines or just one Johnson & Johnson vaccine will probably get sick. That statistic will go down to like 99, but for the most part, it is very, very high for kids. And for the next point on our list is about the House voting to remove Confederate statues. And this one's interesting to me because every single Democrat voted for it. I think there were like 2 Democrats that didn't vote at all, but there was no Democrats that voted against removing the Confederate soldiers. But there were 60 plus Republicans that voted for removing the Confederate soldier statues, but there were over 100 that voted to keep them. And their main argument is we want to conserve the history, but also it's a sign of hate. It's not necessarily conserving history. We're getting rid of it because it's a sign of hate, and we need to get rid of hate out of our Capitol building, our White House, our judicial system, legislative system, executive system. We need to get all the hate out, and I think this is a major step in doing that, getting rid of our Confederate statues that showed slavery, supported slavery, fought for slavery, almost ripped our country in half, or it temporarily did until we won the Civil War. And I really think that getting rid of these statues is a major step forward.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like, why would, I mean, obviously they're arguing that this is a part of our history. It is, but it's a very negative part of our history. I mean, obviously we're not trying to ignore it, but we obviously shouldn't have these evil people being representing our United States Capitol, right? Like we can't have that, right? Like, and it's like going against that is just kind of hate filled, in my opinion. So I feel like, why not, right? Like,
Right.
it's part of our history, but it's even more than our history. It's a symbolism. Our history can be shown anywhere, but the symbolism matters on the steps of our Capitol.
Yeah, and especially because our country is getting more and more diverse, having a symbol of slavery still left in the Capitol building it's not going to show leadership. It's not going to show that our country is not just all white anymore. It wasn't to begin with, of course. The black population was a lot lower than it is now. And like I said before, this is going to be a major step forward for our society. And now this is a big section of our podcast, and this is going to be talking about the indictments that are being pushed against the former President Trump. This is big because these are criminal charges that are being pressed against his organization. And I think it was this morning his CFO turned into the grand jury that was prosecuting them. And they're going to be held to charges for tax fraud and avoiding taxes. I don't remember the exact number, but it did come out during the election that the New York Times had pulled together about how much taxes he paid, and it was very, very low. It was less than $1,000. And I don't really think Trump's going to be going to jail. And I don't really even know if he's going to pay any fines because he's gotten around these kind of things before. So I don't really know if anything's going to happen to him. Of course, if the right thing happens, yes, he will probably go to jail if in a perfect world, but we don't live in a perfect world. The criminal justice system isn't perfect. He will probably get around these charges. His CFO that turned himself in, will probably get charged. It might go to prison. I don't know the whole story yet because it hasn't come out yet. But what Trump will probably do is blame it all on his CFO and take no responsibility himself.
Yeah, I think, but also something to keep in mind, even though how unlikely it may be, Trump's no longer the president. He doesn't have that immunity that he had prior to. He doesn't have that immunity prior to the prior to January 20th. So yeah, like as we were saying, as we were seeing back in like 2020, he was getting all away with like all these scandals and stuff, and throughout his presidency in general. But nobody bothered to like remove him from office because that would just be too detrimental to the how all this infighting would happen. But now, since he no longer has political power other than the things he can say on his blog post,
well, certain people did have the responsibility and did decide they wanted to remove him. It wasn't. Yes, there would be infighting, but yes, he did get impeached twice. Votes to convict him and remove him from office. Of course, the second time he wasn't in office anymore, but yes, there were scandals that went on that were in his presidency, and he got impeached for it. No Republican in the House voted for the impeachment the first time, And, of course, Mitt Romney voted for the conviction for the first time. And, of course, there were, I think it was 7 Republicans that voted in the Senate. And was it 10 in the House, I think, for the second impeachment.
Yeah.
But, of course, now it's different, like you said. He can't just go pardon his CFO anymore, right? He can't just go pardon whoever he wants. He doesn't have that power anymore. He's a private citizen. He gets convicted. He can be convicted just like anybody else now. He's a private citizen. No longer does he hold the office of the presidency. His organization can get fined millions of dollars now. Like I said, he's not a president anymore. He's a private citizen. And he now has a liability to be pressed with charges and be convicted of a felony.
Yeah, so it's a good thing for democracy, as it still isn't perfect, but it's a good thing to show that for future presidents and future lawmakers, future business people, you can't just have presidential power to get around things. You can't just get pardons.
Right.
You can't just you can't just like have immunity because nobody wants to impeach you, right? Like and remove you from office. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that basically wraps up that segment, and now we're going on to a threat that Kevin McCarthy, currently the minority leader in the House, probably the future speaker, we don't know yet, but it's probably going to happen, and he has threatened to remove any Republican House members from their committees if they join Nancy Pelosi's commission for the January 6th. And I don't think this is going to surprise you, but Liz Cheney decided to go join that January 6th commission because she had already been kicked off of her number 3 position in the House, and now she's going to be kicked off of any committee she's on. Sam, does that surprise you whatsoever?
Not at all.
So I think Liz Cheney, especially after all this infighting in the Republican Party, has really risen up above the Trump wing of the party and said, you know what, this isn't right. We're not going to say this election is stolen. I'm not going to say what happened at the Capitol was right, the Capitol riot on January 6th. And she stood up, she voted to impeach, she even got kicked off her number 3 position in the House. She could have been the future Speaker of the House for all we knew. And she took the liability and decided to do the right thing, not because she's going to get into power, it's because she knew it was the right thing to do. It didn't reflect on what she got back, but she knows that she did the right thing. And I think morally that helps your mind, like in your mental health, really, to know that you did the right thing and everyone below you decided to go along with the Trump wing of the party and say that the January 6th Capitol insurrection wasn't good. It wasn't a tourist visit like a lot of Republicans are now saying it was. The election was not stolen, and she's risen up above that to say that's not true. That did not happen. And I think, like I said, it reflects poorly on her in terms of getting removed from her committees and being removed from the number 3 position in the House. But I think history will look back on Liz Cheney and see that she was the person that rose up against all her colleagues.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and the thing is that it's different from most other, like, conservative not Trumpers, because, as we can see from North Carolina, Richard Burr, I believe his name, Senator Richard Burr, even though, like, this was during the second impeachment of Donald Trump, Burr decided to vote against it, but the thing is that's different from Liz Cheney right now, because Liz Cheney still has multiple terms left. Like, she can, I mean, not he can keep running. I'm sorry. He can keep running, but he can keep running, but it was Burr's last term. So that's the difference here. Is like he's doing the right thing, while on the other hand, everyone else. Well,
the thing with Burr is he doesn't necessarily have to retire. He had already announced that he was going to retire prior to voting to convict the former president. Liz Cheney, yes, she could run again, but she will probably get primaried in the Republican primary because she's from Wyoming. the Wyoming at-large district. Wyoming is very pro-Trump, and if Liz Cheney's anti-Trump, she will not win that primary. She's probably not going to be coming back to the House, assuming she stays with her positions that she's currently in. She's not going to be coming back to the House probably in 2023, and that's probably because she's going to get primaried. Yes, Richard Burr, he could have announced, like you said, he did announce that he was going to retire. He didn't necessarily have to. He could undo that promise and not retire. Ron Johnson did that. He said back in 2016 when he won re-election, okay, if I won re-election, this was before the 2016 election, if I win again, this will be my last term. He's now falling out on that promise. Trump wants him to run. If Trump wants him to run, Ron Johnson will probably run a re-election. So he's just backing back on that promise of retirement, which Richard Burr could do. It's probably too late at this point, but yes, he could probably do that. So I feel like, yes, Liz Cheney does have more leverage against her because she's probably going to run again in 2022. Probably going to get, like I said, defeated in the Republican primary, and Richard Burr is not running. But at the end of the day, Richard Burr did something brave. He didn't vote for the Capitol Commission, which is, I don't understand that at all. If you vote to convict the former president about the Capitol insurrection, why don't you want to investigate the Capitol insurrection? So things aren't adding up there. Of course, Rod Portman voted for it, and that they kind of exchanged. Richard Burr voted to convict. Rod Portman did not. Rod Portman voted for the commission on the Capitol 6th insurrection. Burr did not, so it kind of evens itself out. But I really don't understand why Burr didn't vote for that. And of course, it's now getting off topic. But, yes, I think I get what you're saying. But Burr doesn't necessarily have to retire. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. But yeah, the difference is that Liz Cheney, she has something to lose. Like, that's the major difference.
Basically, her chance of being the Speaker of the House.
Yes, and
being in the House at all.
And re-election is still also on the line as well, which is dangerous.
And she was trying to run for Senate back in 2018. Was it 2018?
Yeah.
I think it might have been 2018.
I think. Yeah.
It might have been. I don't remember.
know.
Okay,
Yeah.
I don't remember. It might have been 2018. Might have been before that. She ran for Senate and she lost the primary. So this probably will happen in the House. She will probably lose the primary.
I think a good analogy, don't like lash me on this, but I think a good analogy would be Liz Cheney is the John McCain of 2020.
Yeah,
21.
There's these certain Republicans that have stuck up above the crowd. Mitt Romney is one of them, especially during this Trump era.
Yeah.
John McCain was another one, not only during the Trump era, but during his presidential campaign in 2008, saying Obama is not a bad person. I don't agree with him and his policies, but he's not a bad person. And so McCain, yes, he's another one. Both of those that I just mentioned, McCain and Romney, are both that ran against President Obama, former President Obama, which is interesting. So there are these certain Republicans. Adam Kinzinger is another one. There's these certain Republicans that decide to stick up above the party, and I believe, like I said about Liz Cheney, history will look back on them greatly compared to their colleagues. The Republican Party, the Trump wing of the Republican Party, will be looked down poorly in history, I bet. Because of what they've done, what corruption they have put, the holes they've poked in the government. I really think that history is going to look back on this and say the Republican Party did not do the right thing. The whole of the Republican Party did not do the right thing. Alright, so this comes to our last story, and this is a nice short one. And this is going through Biden is going to go to Florida. I think he's already there by the time we're recording this. He left this morning, so I'm assuming he's there. He's going down to Florida to look at the condo collapse that happened in... I don't think it was Miami. It was whatever's right next to Miami. But yeah, he was going to meet with the survivors, look at the damage of the building, and just hang out there. I don't know exactly what he's planning to do while he's down there. But I think this really shows leadership. This really shows leadership compared to the former President Trump. There was a hurricane in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
President Trump didn't come until, days and days after it happened. Yes, the condo collapse was earlier this week, but it didn't take him weeks to get up there. Puerto Rico had a hurricane, and then weeks later, President Trump finally came. He said, Puerto Rico has big water, big water. And
Yeah,
he
it's
never
like,
said anything real helpful,
you don't need to.
right?
You don't need to throw paper. You don't need to throw paper towels at people. Like, come on.
Right, and I mean, what he said sounded like an SNL skit. Of course, SNL did a skit very similar to that, and it was almost the exact thing that he said, which is kind of funny. But yes, I think Trump. I'm not Trump. Sorry, I think Biden is doing a lot of actions to show that he is a better leader than our former president, and being the successor from President Trump, he really needs to show this leadership. Any thoughts, Sam? To wrap this up?
Yeah, I think it's a big seismic difference, and I think it's a welcome one. As I think the president should have a direct connection with the people and the people's problems, so that he can feel like there's not a hierarchy now. It's not a
Yeah.
yeah, it's not a hierarchy. It's not a hierarchy. The president, it's an election official. Like, you don't. I mean, some people try to climb their way up to the top, like it's a social situation. Like, the president is the best position in life you can get. So the president's job is to help the American people, and so I think
Yes,
this is
and I
a very
think,
good demonstration of that. Yeah.
And the president has, done a good job of showing this leadership, which it's been an empty hole the past 4 years during the Trump administration. And I think this has covered most of the political. I think we've covered most of the political events that have happened this week, and so we're about to wrap this up.
Yeah.
So, any last thoughts, Sam?
Yeah, just as we mentioned earlier, get your kid vaccinated. Get yourself vaccinated. This research shows it's so much better.
All right.
We
This
wanna-
is Teens
we wanna
Talk
be
Politics. Bye, everyone.
All right. Bye.